The crystal vase shattered against the marble floor of the penthouse, sending water and white orchids sprawling across the imported Italian tile. Naomi Carter didn't flinch. After 3 years cleaning the homes of Manhattan's elite, she'd learned that wealth and control were inversely proportional. The richer they were, the more likely something expensive would end up broken when emotions ran high. What made her pause mid-stroke with her cleaning cloth wasn't the destruction, but the man who caused it. Kang Min Jae stood silhouetted against the floor-to-ceiling windows of his Tribeca penthouse, the Manhattan skyline glittering behind him like a kingdom he owned but didn't want. His white dress shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, sleeves rolled to his elbows, revealing forearms corded with lean muscle and a glimpse of ink, elegant Korean characters tattooed vertically along the inside of his left wrist. At 34 he was the youngest CEO of Kang Industries' North American operations, and right now he looked like a man at the end of his rope. His phone lay in pieces near the shattered vase. His jaw was clenched so tight Naomi could see the muscle jumping beneath his skin. And when his dark eyes finally landed on her, crouched beside the mess with her supplies, she felt the air shift in the room. "How long have you been standing there?" His voice was low, controlled, carrying just the hint of a Korean accent that made certain syllables sharper, more precise. "Long enough to know you need a new phone," Naomi replied quietly, not looking up as she carefully collected the larger shards of crystal. "And possibly a new vase. This one's done." Something that might have been amusement flickered across his features before the tension returned. "I'll add it to the list of things I need to replace today." Naomi risked a glance up at him. In 3 years of cleaning his penthouse twice a week, she'd seen Kang Min Jae in many states. Exhausted after 18-hour days, focused and intense during video conferences she'd quietly worked around, even occasionally relaxed on Sunday mornings when he'd make himself elaborate Korean breakfasts that filled the entire apartment with incredible smells. But she'd never seen him like this. Desperate. Cornered. "Are you all right, Mr. Kang?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. He stared at her for a long moment and Naomi suddenly became aware of how she must look. On her knees in her cleaning company's polo shirt and khaki pants, her natural hair pulled back in a practical bun, no makeup because she'd been awake since 4:30 a.m. to catch the train from the Bronx. She was nobody. Invisible. Just another service worker in a city full of them. "No," he said finally, the honesty startling them both. "I'm not all right." Then Min Jae did something completely unexpected. He sank down onto the floor across from her, expensive suit pants and all, and put his head in his hands. "I need a wife." Naomi's hand froze mid-reach for another piece of crystal. "I'm sorry, what?" "I need a wife." He looked up, and his eyes held a wild kind of desperation that made her stomach clench. "For tonight. My family is arriving from Seoul in 6 hours for what they think is my engagement party to Song Hae-won, the daughter of my father's oldest business partner. Except I'm not engaged to Song Hae-won. I've never even met her. I've been dodging my family's matchmaking attempts for 3 years, and now they've taken matters into their own hands." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "They planned an entire engagement ceremony. Traditional Korean piebeek, both families, 80 guests, and the woman I'm supposed to be marrying. The only problem is that I've spent the last hour on the phone telling them I'm already married." The room spun slightly. Naomi sat back on her heels, abandoning the crystal cleanup entirely. "You told them you're married? When you're not. When the alternative is being forced into a marriage arrangement that treats me like a business asset instead of a person." "Yes." Min Jae's voice turned bitter. "My father doesn't care about my happiness. He cares about securing the Song family's manufacturing connections. And Hae-won, she doesn't want this marriage any more than I do. She's in love with someone else, someone her family would never approve of." "So you lied to your entire family." Naomi tried to process this. "And now they're coming here to meet your non-existent wife. Now you understand my problem." He stood abruptly, pacing toward the windows. "I've been calling everyone I know for the past hour. Friends, colleagues, that actress I dated briefly last year. Everyone is either unavailable, would be immediately recognized as fake by my mother, or wants something I'm not willing to give." Naomi carefully placed the crystal shards in her cleaning bucket and stood. "Mr. Kang, I'm very sorry about your situation, but I should probably finish cleaning and—" "You." The single word stopped her mid-sentence. Min Jae turned from the windows, and the intensity in his gaze made her take an involuntary step back. You could do it. Do what? Be my wife. For tonight. He moved toward her with sudden purpose. Think about it, Naomi. My family has never been to this penthouse. They don't know anyone in my New York circle. You're intelligent, composed, and you've been in my home twice a week for 3 years. You know how I take my coffee, what foods I keep in my refrigerator, small details that make a relationship believable. Mr. Kang. And most importantly, he continued, his voice dropping to something almost pleading, you're the only person in my life who's ever looked at me like I'm just a person. Not the Kang heir. Not a CEO. Not a prize to be won or a connection to be made. Just Min Jae. The words hung between them, raw and honest. Naomi's heart hammered against her ribs. This was insane. This was beyond insane. She should grab her cleaning supplies, walk out that door, and never look back. I can't, she whispered. Mr. Kang, I'm your maid. I clean toilets and fold your laundry and make $18 an hour. Your family would take one look at me and know something was wrong. My family expects me to rebel against their expectations. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. If anything, choosing someone completely outside their predetermined criteria is exactly what they'd expect from me. And Naomi? He took another step closer. You're not just anything. You're brilliant at your job, you're observant, you're kind without being servile, and you have this quiet strength that I've noticed every time you've worked here. She wanted to ask when he'd noticed her at all. In 3 years their interactions had been minimal. Professional. He'd leave her payment on the counter, sometimes add a generous tip during holidays, occasionally nod good morning if their schedules overlapped. She'd assumed she was invisible to him. Apparently she'd been wrong. What would this arrangement entail exactly? Naomi heard herself ask, even as her rational mind screamed that she should run. Min Jae's eyes lit with hope. 6 hours. So, my family arrives at 7 p.m. for a small private dinner here in the penthouse before tomorrow's larger ceremony. You'd play my wife through dinner, help me convince them our marriage is real, and then plead exhaustion or work obligations tomorrow. By the time they realize something is wrong, they'll be back in Seoul and I'll deal with the fallout from a distance. And what do I get out of this insanity? $50,000. Naomi's knees went weak. She grabbed the back of the nearest chair for support. $50,000 for one dinner? For saving my life, Min Jae corrected quietly. For giving me one more day before I lose control of every choice I have left. My father has already arranged for me to be transferred back to Seoul if I don't comply with this marriage. He's threatening to remove me from my position here, to strip away the one piece of autonomy I've managed to build. His hands clenched into fists at his sides. I know it's wrong to ask this of you. I know I'm being selfish. But Naomi, I'm desperate. And right now, you're the only person I trust not to use this situation against me later. Trust. The words settled between them with unexpected weight. Naomi thought about her life. 3 jobs just to keep her head above water. The studio apartment in the Bronx she shared with her younger sister who was trying to finish nursing school. The medical bills from her mother's death 2 years ago that still haunted her credit score. The constant, grinding anxiety of never having enough. $50,000 would change everything. Pay off the medical debt. Give Maya breathing room to focus on school without working night shifts. Maybe even let Naomi finally enroll in those business administration classes she'd been dreaming about since high school. 6 hours of pretending to be married to a man who'd never been anything but respectful to her. 6 hours of playing a role. She'd spent years making herself invisible in the homes of the wealthy. How hard could it be to make herself visible for one evening? I want the money up front, she heard herself say. Half before your family arrives, half after dinner ends. And I want it in writing that this is a one-time arrangement with no expectation of anything beyond tonight. Min Jae's expression transformed. Relief, gratitude, and something else she couldn't quite name flooded his features. Done. Absolutely done. Thank you, Naomi. You have no idea what this means to me. I'm probably going to regret this, she muttered. Probably, he agreed, and this time his smile was genuine. But I promise I'll make it as painless as possible. And Naomi? He held out his hand. For tonight I need you to call me Min Jae. Not Mr. Kang. Can you do that? She looked at his outstretched hand. Strong fingers, neat nails, that intriguing tattoo visible on his inner wrist. This was her last chance to walk away. To stay in her safe, invisible life where she knew exactly where she stood. Naomi reached out and shook his hand. His grip was warm, firm, and sent an unexpected jolt of electricity up her arm. I can do that. Min Jae. His smile widened, and for the first time since she'd known him, Kang Min Jae looked genuinely happy. Then let's get you ready to meet my family, Mrs. Kang. The next 6 hours passed in a whirlwind that left Naomi's head spinning. First came the contract. Min Jae had called his personal attorney, a sharp-eyed woman named Jessica Park, who arrived within 30 minutes with paperwork that made everything legally binding. Naomi signed documents promising confidentiality while Min Jae transferred $25,000 to her bank account right there at his dining table. Watching that number appear in her banking app made everything suddenly, terrifyingly real. Now comes the hard part, Min Jae said after Jessica left. He gestured to the couch in his expansive living room. We need to build a believable backstory. My mother is terrifyingly perceptive, and my older sister has made an art form out of detecting lies. If we're going to pull this off, we need details that feel lived in. Naomi settled onto the leather couch, hyper-aware of how out of place she felt in her cleaning uniform. Where do we start? How we met. Min Jae sat across from her, close enough to be intimate but far enough to maintain propriety. We should stay as close to the truth as possible. Lies are harder to maintain than adjusted truths. So I'm still your maid? No. He shook his head firmly. You were working for a cleaning company that serviced this building. We met 3 years ago when you were assigned to my penthouse. I was immediately drawn to you, but you kept things professional. It took me 6 months of leaving increasingly larger tips and trying to make conversation before you finally agreed to have coffee with me. Despite herself, Naomi smiled. You were persistent? Desperately so. Something flickered in his eyes. Because the truth is, Naomi, I have noticed you over these 3 years. The way you're never intrusive but always thorough. How you rearranged the books on my shelf by genre because you noticed I kept searching for things. The time you left a note recommending a Korean film because you'd overheard me on the phone talking about missing home. Naomi's breath caught. She'd done all those things, small gestures she thought had gone unnoticed. You remember that? I remember everything. His voice was quiet but certain. So when I said earlier that you're the only person who looks at me like I'm human, I meant it. You've been kind without wanting anything in return. In my world, that's rare. The moment stretched between them, loaded with implications neither was quite ready to examine. Min Jae cleared his throat, breaking the spell. So, coffee turned into dinner. Dinner turned into walks through Central Park. I introduced you to Korean food beyond the basics, and you introduced me to your favorite soul food restaurants in Harlem. I did. Naomi was trying to keep up with the fabricated history. You did. There's this place called Melba's that makes peach cobbler you claim changed my life. I became obsessed with it. He was fully in storytelling mode now, and Naomi realized he'd probably been constructing this narrative in his head for hours. We kept our relationship quiet because you were worried about appearances, about people thinking you were using me. I was worried about my family's reaction to me dating someone outside our social circle. But we fell in love anyway, Naomi supplied, getting into the rhythm of it. But we fell in love anyway, Min Jae agreed. 6 months ago I proposed. Private ceremony at the Brooklyn Botanic Garden during cherry blossom season. Just you and me and a ring I'd been carrying around for weeks waiting for the perfect moment. What does the ring look like? He stood, disappeared into his bedroom and returned with a small velvet box. When he opened it, Naomi's breath caught. The ring was beautiful. Elegant. A simple platinum band with a single diamond, not ostentatiously large but clearly high quality. Nestled beside it was a matching wedding band. These were my grandmother's, Min Jae said softly. She died when I was 15. She was the only person in my family who ever asked me what I wanted instead of telling me what I should do. He looked up, meeting Naomi's eyes. I've been keeping these rings as a promise to myself that when I got married, it would be because I chose to. Not because my family arranged it. The weight of what he was entrusting to her settled on Naomi's shoulders. Min Jae, these are family heirlooms. Are you sure you want to? I'm sure. He took the rings from the box and held out his hand. Hey. Naomi extended her left hand, trying to ignore how it trembled slightly. Min Jae's fingers were gentle as he slid the engagement ring onto her finger, followed by the wedding band. They fit perfectly, which seemed impossible given that he couldn't have known her ring size. "How did you? You have elegant hands," he said simply. "I noticed. And I may have asked my assistant to determine standard sizing based on observations." A slight smile. "I'm thorough when something matters." Naomi stared at the rings on her finger. They felt substantial, real, like a promise made in metal and stone. "When did we get married?" 4 months ago. City Hall, because we wanted something private before the chaos of telling our families. We were planning to have a traditional ceremony later, but then my father started pressuring me about Song Hae-won, and we decided to keep it secret a bit longer. Until today. Until I couldn't put it off anymore. Min Jae's jaw tightened. "My father called this morning to inform me that the Song family was flying in tomorrow for an engagement ceremony he'd arranged. That's when I told him I was already married. He demanded proof, so I sent photos." "What photos?" Min Jae had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. He pulled out his phone, scrolling through images before turning the screen toward her. Naomi's eyes widened. The photos showed her and Min Jae in various locations around New York. Central Park, a restaurant she recognized from magazine spreads, the Brooklyn Bridge at sunset. In each photo they looked comfortable together. Happy. Like a couple in love. "How when, these are photoshopped." "I have a very talented and very discreet assistant," Min Jae admitted. "I gave her photos of us both and asked her to work some magic. These were delivered to me an hour ago." Naomi studied the images. They were flawless. Her standing beside Min Jae with his arm around her waist, both smiling at something off camera. Him kissing her temple while she laughed. The two of them holding hands, his grandmother's rings clearly visible on her finger. "Your assistant is terrifyingly good at this. She's been helping me dodge my family's matchmaking attempts for 3 years. She's had practice." Min Jae took the phone back. "These photos, combined with our backstory and the fact that you can answer questions about my daily routine, should be enough to convince my family. At least for tonight. And tomorrow? When they want a big ceremony." His expression clouded. "Tomorrow I tell them that you're uncomfortable with a large traditional wedding, that we prefer to keep things private. They'll be angry, but by then they'll be invested in the idea of our marriage. My mother especially. Once she meets you, once she sees that I'm happy, she'll become protective of that happiness." "You sound certain." "My mother married into the Kang family. She knows what it's like to be judged, to have to prove yourself worthy." Min Jae's voice softened. "She spent 35 years navigating Korean high society and corporate politics. If anyone will understand choosing love over obligation, it's her." Naomi wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe this could actually work. "We should practice," Min Jae said, standing. "Physical proximity, casual touches, the kind of unconscious intimacy that married couples have. My family will be watching for those details." Her stomach flipped. "What kind of touching?" "Nothing inappropriate," he assured her quickly. "But I might put my hand on the small of your back when we walk. Or take your hand when we sit together. Maybe touch your shoulder when I pass behind you. Small things that signal comfort and familiarity." It made sense. Naomi stood, squaring her shoulders. "Hey, show me." What followed was perhaps the most awkward hour of Naomi's life. Min Jae tried to demonstrate casual touching, but they were both so aware of each other that everything felt stilted and obvious. His hand would land on her back and hover there uncertainly. She tried to lean into him naturally and end up stiff as a board. "This is a disaster," Naomi finally groaned, stepping away from yet another failed attempt at looking comfortable. "We look like teenagers at their first dance, not a married couple." Min Jae ran his hand through his hair, disheveling it in a way that made him look younger, more vulnerable. "You're right. We're overthinking this. Maybe we just need to." His phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his face went pale. "They've landed. My parents, my sister, and apparently my grandmother decided to come too. They're heading from JFK now. We have less than 2 hours." Panic flared in Naomi's chest. 2 hours? I thought we had 6. They took an earlier flight. Min Jae looked at her and she saw her own fear reflected in his eyes. "Naomi, I'm so sorry. I know this is moving faster than we planned, but I need to change." She looked down at her cleaning uniform. And shower. And figure out what to wear. And, oh God, I can't do this. Min Jae, I'm going to ruin everything. He crossed to her in 2 strides and took her hands. His grip was warm, steady, anchoring. Breathe. Look at me. She did. His eyes were dark and intense but kind. You can do this. I know you can. You've been navigating wealthy households for years. You know how to read people, how to be what they expect while maintaining your dignity. That's all this is. Just be yourself, but yourself as someone who loves me. I don't know you well enough to convincingly love you, Naomi whispered. Something flickered across his face. Hurt. Longing. It was gone before she could identify it. Then for tonight, he said quietly, pretend. Pretend I'm someone worth loving. Pretend that when I look at you it makes you feel seen. Pretend that choosing me was the easiest decision you ever made. His voice dropped lower. And I'll pretend that having you beside me is the one real thing in my manufactured life. The words hit Naomi square in the chest. Because she had felt seen these past few hours. She had felt like her choices mattered. And looking at Min Jae now, seeing past the expensive clothes and corporate polish to the lonely man beneath, she thought maybe pretending wouldn't be so hard after all. Okay, she breathed. Hey, what do I wear? Relief flooded his features. My assistant left options in the guest room. He's about your size. Go shower and change. I'll order food to be delivered. My mother will expect a home-cooked meal that I definitely didn't make myself, so we'll say you prepared it earlier. Naomi moved toward the guest room, then paused. Min Jae? What's your grandmother like? His smile was genuine and warm. Terrifying and wonderful in equal measure. She'll be the hardest to fool, but if you win her over, everyone else will fall in line. No pressure then. None at all, Mrs. Kang. The name should have sounded wrong. Fern. But as Naomi headed to prepare herself for the performance of her life, she found it didn't sound wrong at all. Sounded almost right. And that was the most dangerous thing of all. The guest bathroom was larger than Naomi's entire bedroom back in the Bronx. Marble countertops, a rainfall shower that could fit 4 people, and toiletries that probably cost more than her weekly grocery budget. She stood under the hot water longer than necessary, trying to wash away the surreal feeling that had settled over her like a second skin. When she finally emerged, wrapped in a towel that felt like clouds, she found the guest bedroom had been transformed into a styling suite. 3 dress options hung in garment bags, shoes lined up beneath them, and a makeup station had been set up at the vanity with more products than Naomi had owned in her entire life. A note in elegant handwriting sat propped against the mirror. Mrs. Kang. Mr. Kang's mother appreciates traditional elegance with modern sensibility. His grandmother values authenticity over ostentation. I've selected pieces that bridge both preferences. The navy dress for formal family dinners. The cream for casual elegance. The emerald if you want to make a statement. Make a statement. J. Park. Naomi smiled despite her nerves. Min Jae's assistant was clearly Team Rebellion. She chose the emerald dress. Not because she wanted to make a statement exactly, but because when she held it up, the deep green silk seemed to glow against her brown skin. The cut was elegant. A fitted bodice with a modest neckline and 3/4 sleeves that would satisfy traditional sensibilities, but the way it draped and moved suggested confidence without arrogance. It fit perfectly. Of course it did. Naomi sat at the vanity and stared at her reflection. Her natural hair was still damp, curling in its usual pattern. She could straighten it, there were tools for that, but something made her hesitate. Min Jae had said his mother understood being judged, had to prove herself worthy. Maybe authenticity was worth more than meeting expectations. She worked product through her curls, defining them until they framed her face in a halo that made her look softer, younger. Makeup came next, not heavy, just enough to enhance. A sweep of bronze across her eyelids, mascara that made her eyes look enormous, a berry-toned lip that complemented the dress. When she finally stood and looked at herself in the full-length mirror, Naomi barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked worthy, like someone who could stand beside Kang Min Jae and belong there. The thought terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. A soft knock at the door made her jump. Naomi? May I come in? Yes, she called, voice slightly breathless. The door opened and Min Jae stepped through. He'd changed into dark slacks and a crisp white dress shirt, The sleeves rolled to his elbows in that casually elegant way that made him look like he'd stepped out of a magazine spread. His hair was styled back from his face, revealing the strong lines of his jaw and cheekbones. But it was his expression when he saw her that made Naomi's breath catch. He stopped dead in the doorway. His eyes widened fractionally, then traveled slowly from her face down the length of her body and back up again. Not leering, assessing. Appreciating. When his gaze finally returned to hers, something hot and desperate flickered in those dark depths before he carefully shuttered it. You look. His voice came out rough. He cleared his throat and tried again. You look absolutely perfect. Your assistant has good taste. It's not the dress. Min Jae moved closer and Naomi caught his scent, sandalwood and something citrusy that made her want to lean in. Though the dress is stunning. You look confident. Beautiful. Like you were born to wear grandmother's rings. Naomi glanced down at her left hand where the diamond caught the light. I'm terrified. So am I. The admission surprised her. Min Jae smiled slightly. But we're terrified together. That has to count for something. He held out his hand. They'll be here in 30 minutes. The food just arrived. I've set up the dining room. I thought we could practice a bit more, try to get comfortable with each other before the performance begins. Naomi placed her hand in his. His fingers closed around hers, warm and sure, and this time it didn't feel awkward. Felt right. Natural. Like her hand belonged there. They walked together into the main living space and Naomi gasped. The penthouse had been transformed. Soft lighting created an intimate atmosphere. The dining table was set with dishes that looked suspiciously home-cooked. Some kind of elaborate Korean spread with multiple banchan, a steaming jjigae, perfectly grilled meat. Candles flickered on every surface. Music played softly in the background, something classical and soothing. Min Jae, this is too much. He looked suddenly uncertain. I wanted it to feel like a home, not just a showplace. My mother always says you can tell if a space is lived in by whether it has heart. It's perfect, Naomi said honestly. It looks like people who love each other live here. His hand tightened on hers. That's the idea. They stood there for a moment, neither moving. The tension between them had shifted from awkward to something else entirely. Something charged and dangerous. We should practice, Min Jae said finally. The touching. We need to look natural. Okay. Naomi turned to face him. How do we? He reached up slowly, giving her time to pull away and tucked a curl behind her ear. His fingers lingered against her jaw, thumb brushing her cheekbone with devastating gentleness. Like this, he murmured. Small touches that look unconscious. Things we do without thinking because we've done them 1,000 times before. Naomi's heart hammered against her ribs. And I would? You might adjust my collar. His voice had gone low, almost hypnotic. Or brush a piece of lint from my shoulder. Rest your hand on my arm when you're making a point. Little things that create intimacy. Naomi reached up with trembling fingers and straightened his already perfect collar. Her knuckles brushed against the warm skin of his neck, and she felt his pulse jump beneath her touch. Like that, she whispered. Exactly like that. He hadn't moved away. They stood so close that Naomi could see the faint scar above his left eyebrow, could count his impossibly long eyelashes. Naomi, I need to ask you something. And I need you to be honest. What? Can you kiss me? The question was barely above a whisper. Not now necessarily. But if the moment calls for it tonight, if my grandmother gets suspicious or my sister pushes too hard, could you kiss me and make it look real? Every nerve ending in Naomi's body fired at once. Yes. Think so. If I have to. It can't look like a performance. His hand still cupped her face. It has to look like you've kissed me 1,000 times. Like it's easy and natural and something you don't even think about anymore. Then maybe we should, the words stuck in her throat. Practice. Min Jae's eyes darkened. For a long moment he didn't move, didn't breathe. Then slowly he leaned in. Just practice, he said against her lips. Just so we know we can do it. Just practice, Naomi agreed. The first brush of his mouth against hers was feather-light. Testing. His lips were soft, warm, tasting faintly of the coffee he'd been drinking earlier. Naomi's eyes fluttered closed as he angled his head slightly, deepening the kiss by degrees. His free hand settled on her waist, pulling her closer but not demanding. Giving her space to pull away if she wanted. He didn't want to. Naomi's hand slid up his chest, feeling the solid warmth of him through the thin dress shirt, and settled at the back of his neck. She kissed him back, letting instinct guide her, and felt him inhale sharply. The kiss shifted. Became less careful. His fingers tightened on her waist, thumb tracing small circles that sent heat spiraling through her body. Her lips parted and he took the invitation, tasting her more deeply, drawing a small sound from her throat that she hadn't meant to make. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Min Jae rested his forehead against hers. His voice was wrecked. That was definitely convincing. Yeah. Naomi could barely form words. Very convincing. They'll definitely believe we've done that before. Many times, Min Jae agreed. He pulled back slightly to look at her and his expression was raw. Vulnerable. Naomi, The intercom buzzed, shattering the moment like dropped glass. They sprang apart. Min Jae ran a hand through his hair, musing it, while Naomi pressed cool hands to her burning cheeks. On the intercom screen she could see 4 figures in the lobby. They're here, Min Jae said unnecessarily. He looked at her and she saw her own panic reflected in his eyes. Are you ready? Oh. She wasn't ready. She'd never be ready for this insanity. Yes, Naomi said. Let's do this. Min Jae crossed to the intercom and pressed the button. When he spoke, his voice was perfectly controlled, giving no hint of the passionate kiss they'd just shared. Send them up, please. He turned back to Naomi and held out his hand. Whatever happens in the next few hours, just remember, you're not alone in this. We're a team. Naomi took his hand, lacing their fingers together. The rings on her finger caught the light, a promise made in borrowed metal. Together, she agreed. The elevator dinged. The doors slid open. And Naomi's carefully controlled life walked into beautiful, terrifying chaos. The family arrives. Min Jae's mother was the first through the door, and Naomi immediately understood why he'd been so nervous. Kang Yoon-hee was elegant in the way that came from decades of practice. Her silk blouse and tailored trousers probably cost more than Naomi's monthly rent, but she wore them like a uniform. Her hair was pulled back in a sleek chignon, diamond studs glinting at her ears, and her posture was absolutely perfect. But it was her eyes that arrested Naomi's attention. Sharp, intelligent, missing nothing as they swept the penthouse before landing on her son. Min Jae, she said, her voice carrying warmth beneath the formality. She moved forward with arms outstretched. Min Jae released Naomi's hand and embraced his mother, and Naomi saw him relax fractionally in her arms. Whatever complicated feelings existed in this family, there was genuine love there too. Yama, he murmured into her hair. I didn't expect you so early. Your father was impatient. She pulled back, gripping his shoulders as she studied his face. You look tired. And troubled. Her gaze slid past him to Naomi. And you must be the wife my son forgot to tell me about until this morning. There was steel beneath the pleasant words. Naomi felt herself being assessed, catalogued, judged in the space of 3 seconds. Yama, this is Naomi. Naomi, my mother, Kang Yoon-hee. Naomi stepped forward and her years of navigating wealthy households kicked in. She bowed, not too deep that would look obsequious but enough to show respect. It's an honor to meet you, Mrs. Kang. Min Jae has told me so much about you. Has he? Yoon-hee's expression was unreadable. How interesting, as he's told me virtually nothing about you. That's not fair, Min Jae started, but his mother held up a hand. We'll discuss your communication failures later. She moved closer to Naomi and her sharp eyes catalogued everything. The dress, the hair, the rings. You're very beautiful, Naomi. And young. How old are you? 28, ma'am. Please call me Yoon-hee. We're family now, apparently. The words could have been cutting, but something in her tone softened them slightly. And you're American? Born and raised in New York. Naomi forced herself to maintain eye contact, to not fidget under that penetrating gaze. The Bronx originally, though I've been in Manhattan for the past few years. The Bronx. Yoon-hee repeated the words like she was tasting them. And what do your parents do? Here it was. The moment where her background would be exposed as completely inadequate. My father passed away when I was 12, Naomi said quietly. Construction accident. My mother worked as a nurse until she died 2 years ago from complications of lupus. I have a younger sister who's currently in nursing school. She waited for the judgment, the dismissal. Instead, Yoonhee's expression shifted into something that looked almost like respect. Your mother was a nurse. That's noble work. She glanced at Min Jae. You didn't mention that. I wanted you to meet Naomi and form your own opinion, Min Jae said. He moved to stand beside Naomi, his hands settling on the small of her back in that possessive, protective gesture they'd practiced. Not judge her based on facts that don't tell you who she actually is. And who is she actually? The question came from a new voice. Naomi turned to see a woman who could only be Min Jae's sister stepping out of the elevator. She was stunning, tall and elegant like her mother, with the same sharp intelligence in her eyes. But where Yoonhee maintained careful control, the sister radiated amused skepticism. Naomi, my sister Kang Min Jae. Min Jae, my wife. The mysterious wife who appeared out of nowhere this morning. Min Jae circled them like a shark scenting blood. How romantic. How convenient. How utterly suspicious. Min Jae, Yoonhee warned. What? I'm just saying what we're all thinking. Min Jae stopped in front of Naomi, tilting her head. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? Naomi asked, finding her voice. Someone more obvious. The kind of woman who'd trap my brother into marriage for his money or connections. Min Jae's smile was sharp. But you're nervous. Genuinely nervous. That's either very good acting or you actually care what we think. I care what Min Jae thinks, Naomi replied. You all come with the package. A bark of laughter from the elevator made everyone turn. The man who emerged had to be Min Jae's father. Same facial structure, same elegant build, but harder. Everything about Kang Jae-sung suggested power and control, from his perfectly tailored suit to the way he took in the room like a general surveying a battlefield. So this is the wife. His English was heavily accented but perfect. The American woman whose derailed years of careful planning. Appa, Min Jae started, but his father cut him off with a gesture. We'll discuss this later. Where is Halmione? As if summoned, a fourth figure emerged from the elevator. And Naomi understood immediately why Min Jae had said his grandmother would be the hardest to fool. Kang Soonja was small, elderly, and carried herself like royalty. Her traditional hanbok was a masterwork of silk and embroidery, her white hair pulled back severely, and her eyes, sharp and knowing, seemed to see straight through to Naomi's terrified soul. She walked slowly, leaning on a cane but needing it less than she pretended. When she reached Naomi, she stopped and simply stared. The silence stretched until Naomi thought she might break. Then, in perfect, unaccented English, Soonja said, "Take off your shoes." "Grandmother," Min Jae protested. "Take off your shoes," Soonja repeated, eyes never leaving Naomi's face. "I want to see if you understand respect or if you're just performing it." Naomi's mind raced. This was a test. Everything was a test. She thought about every Korean household she'd ever cleaned, every cultural detail she'd observed and catalogued. She bent down and removed her heels, setting them neatly by the door. Then, moving carefully, she went to the shoe rack near the entrance and selected a pair of house slippers. The ones she knew Min Jae kept for guests because she'd replaced them last week during her regular cleaning. She brought them to Soonja and knelt, holding them out in the traditional manner of offering respect to an elder. "Halmione," she said quietly, using the Korean term for grandmother. "Please be comfortable in your grandson's home." The room held its collective breath. Soonja's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. She took the slippers and, with Naomi's help, changed into them. Then she placed one weathered hand on top of Naomi's bent head. "You may stand, child." When Naomi rose, Soonja was studying her with unnerving intensity. "You know our customs." "I've tried to learn," Naomi said honestly. "Min Jae has been teaching me. I want to honor his heritage even if I'm still learning." Soonja moved past her into the penthouse, surveying everything with those sharp eyes. "This place feels different than the last time I saw photos. More lived in. Softer." She turned back. "You've made changes." It wasn't a question. Naomi's stomach dropped. She had made changes, small ones during her regular cleaning. Moving the stark modern art to less prominent positions and bringing in the more traditional Korean pieces Min Jae kept in storage. Adding plants that brought life to the space. reorganizing the kitchen to be more functional. Yes, she admitted. Min Jae travels so much for work. I wanted him to have a home to come back to, not just a showplace. Soonja's lips curved into something that might have been a smile. A home needs a woman's touch. My grandson has been living like a hotel guest in his own space for too long. She moved to the dining table where the elaborate Korean meal waited. And you cooked this? Naomi hesitated. Min Jae had said to claim she'd made it, but lying to this woman felt impossible. I'm learning Korean cooking. Min Jae has been patient in teaching me, but I'm not skilled enough yet to prepare something like this for such important guests. We ordered from his favorite restaurant. The wrong answer. She just admitted to lying by omission, to not being the perfect Korean wife who could. Good, Soonja said firmly. You told the truth instead of claiming skills you don't have. That shows character. She settled into a chair at the table. Now, sit. Feed me. And tell me the real story of how you trapped my grandson into this marriage. Mother, Yoonhee hissed. That's inappropriate. Is it? Soonja's eyes gleamed with mischief. Because from where I'm sitting, my grandson, who has avoided every matchmaking attempt for 3 years, suddenly produces a wife the morning we arrive to arrange his engagement to someone else. That seems either very lucky or very planned. Min Jae moved to Naomi's side, his hand finding hers under the table and squeezing. I married Naomi because I love her. The timing isn't ideal, but my feelings are real. Love. His father spoke for the first time since sitting down, the word dripping with disdain. What does love have to do with marriage? Marriage is a partnership. A strategic alliance. You chose a woman with no family connections, no business value, no patience for this conversation, Naomi interrupted. Every head swiveled toward her. Min Jae's hand tightened on hers in warning, but she couldn't stop now. Mr. Kang, I understand you're disappointed in your son's choice. I'm not the daughter-in-law you wanted. I don't come from old money or Korean society. My family can't offer business opportunities or strategic advantages. She lifted her chin. But I can offer your son something he's never had. Someone who sees him as Min Jae, not as the Kang heir or a business asset or a problem to be solved. The silence was deafening. Jae-sung's face had gone dangerously still. You dare. Jae-sung. Yoonhee's voice cut across his rising anger. Let the girl speak. Naomi's heart hammered, but she continued. Min Jae is brilliant, kind, hardworking, and desperately lonely. He spent his entire life meeting everyone else's expectations, and he's never complained because he loves his family and respects your sacrifices. But he's also a person with his own dreams, his own needs, his own right to choose his own life. She looked at Min Jae and found him staring at her with an expression that made her breath catch. Wonder. Gratitude. And something deeper that made her next words come from a place more honest than she'd intended. I didn't trap him. He chose me. And I'm going to spend every day trying to be worthy of that choice. Not because of what his family expects, but because he deserves someone who puts his happiness first. The words hung in the air like a thrown gauntlet. Then Soonja began to laugh. It started as a chuckle and grew into full-bodied laughter that shook her small frame. Oh, I like this one. Min Jae, you chose well. Mother. Jae-sung looked scandalized. She has fire, Soonja said firmly. And backbone. And she looks at our grandson like he hung the moon. Her knowing eyes landed on Naomi. Though I suspect the feelings are newer than 4 months, Naomi's blood turned to ice. She knows. Somehow she knows. Min Jae jumped in smoothly. Our relationship moved quickly, how meany. When you know, you know. Indeed. Soonja's smile was enigmatic. Well, what are we waiting for? Naomi, you should serve the eldest first. That's our tradition. Let's see how much my grandson has actually taught you about being part of this family. As Naomi stood to begin serving the meal, her hands trembling slightly, she caught Min Jae watching her with narrowed, calculating eyes. The performance had begun in earnest. And Naomi had the sinking feeling that Min Jae's grandmother had just dealt the first card in a game whose rules she didn't fully understand. Serving a traditional Korean meal to a table full of people who could detect every cultural misstep felt like walking through a minefield blindfolded. Naomi's hands trembled slightly as she moved around the table, starting with Soonja as the eldest, then Jae-sung, then Yoonhee, Min Jae, and finally Min Jae. She'd watched enough Korean dramas during late-night cleaning shifts to know the basics. Serve with both hands, never pour your own drink, always attend to elders first. But knowing and executing under the weight of Soonja's penetrating gaze were two very different things. You pour well, Soonja observed as Naomi filled her water glass. Two hands, appropriate posture. Someone taught you properly. Min Jae did, Naomi said, which was technically true. He'd demonstrated the basics during their frantic preparation hours. He's patient with my mistakes. I'm sure he is. Soonja's tone suggested layers of meaning. Tell me, Naomi, what first attracted you to my grandson? The question was a trap. Naomi could feel everyone waiting for her answer, ready to pounce on any hint of insincerity. She sat down beside Min Jae, and his hand immediately found hers under the table. The touch steadied her. His loneliness, she said quietly. The first time I really saw him, not just noticed him but saw him, he was standing at these windows at 2 a.m., looking out at the city like he was searching for something he couldn't name. He had everything anyone could want, but he looked so isolated. So alone despite being surrounded by all this. She gestured at the expensive penthouse. I wanted to know who he was beneath all the expectations. It wasn't entirely fabricated. She had seen Min Jae like that once, about 6 months ago, when she'd arrived early for a cleaning appointment. He'd been on the phone speaking rapid Korean, and when he'd hung up and stood at those windows, his shoulders had carried a weight she recognized. The exhaustion of performing yourself into someone else's vision. Min Jae's fingers tightened on hers. When she glanced at him, his eyes held something raw and grateful. And you, Min Jae? Yoonhee asked, her voice softer now. What drew you to Naomi? Min Jae didn't hesitate. She sees me. Not Kang Min Jae. Not the family heir. It's me. Do you know how rare that is in my world, Yama? Everyone wants something. Everyone has an angle. But Naomi. He looked at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. She wanted nothing except for me to be happy. That's revolutionary. The words were meant for his family, but they felt personal. Like he was telling her something true beneath the performance. Revolutionary, Jae-sung repeated, his tone dry. My son mistakes basic human decency for something rare because he's been coddled his entire life. Jae-sung, Yoonhee warned again. No, let me speak. He turned his cold gaze on Naomi. You seem intelligent, miss. I'm sorry, Mrs. Kang. So you must understand what you've done. My son was meant to marry Song Hae-won. Her family's manufacturing operations would have secured Kang Industries' supply chain for the next generation. Instead, he's married a woman with no family, no connections, no value to the company. Appa. Min Jae's voice was sharp with anger. I have value to Min Jae, Naomi said quietly, refusing to rise to the bait. Maybe that should matter more than what I can do for Kang Industries. Should it? Jae-sung leaned back. My son enjoys his comfortable life in New York because of sacrifices I made, building this company from nothing. I married for strategic advantage, not love. It's what responsible people do. You married Yama because Halmiani forced you to, Minseo interjected, her tone casual but her eyes sharp. After you got caught embezzling from the company and she threatened to expose you unless you married her daughter's best friend and straightened up. The table went silent. Yoonhee's face remained impassive, but spots of color appeared on her cheekbones. Jae-sung looked like he'd swallowed glass. And Soonja was watching the whole scene with undisguised satisfaction. Family history is so fascinating, isn't it? Soonja said mildly. My son likes to pretend he married strategically, but the truth is he married Yoonhee because I gave him no choice. And 35 years later she's the best thing that ever happened to him, whether he admits it or not. He turned to Naomi. My point, child, is that love and strategy aren't mutually exclusive. Sometimes what the heart wants and what's practical align. Sometimes they don't. The question is whether you and my grandson have the strength to make this work regardless. We do, Min Jae said firmly. Do you? Minseo leaned forward, her expression calculating. Then you won't mind answering some questions. Basic things any married couple would know about each other. Naomi's stomach dropped. Here it was, the real test. What's Min Jae's favorite food? Minseo asked. Your mother's kimchi jjigae, Naomi answered immediately, grateful for the hours of backstory preparation. But when he's stressed, he craves the galbi from that place in Koreatown on 32nd Street. He orders it medium rare even though the restaurant insists it should be well done. Minseo's eyes narrowed. His coffee order? Americano double shot, no sugar. But he pretends to like the fancy lattes I make because he doesn't want to hurt my feelings. That part was true. She'd noticed his grimaces when he thought she wasn't looking during their practice session earlier. What time does he wake up? 5:30 a.m. for his run along the Hudson, then yoga until 6:15. Shower, news in Korean and English while he eats breakfast, leaves for work by 7:30. All details she knew from 3 years of coordinating cleaning schedules around his routine. His biggest fear? Naomi hesitated. This wasn't something they'd covered. She looked at Min Jae, seeing the tension in his jaw, and made an educated guess based on everything she'd learned today. Becoming his father, she said quietly. Losing himself in family expectations until he can't remember who he wanted to be. The silence that followed was deafening. Min Jae stared at her with an expression that looked like she'd reached into his chest and pulled out something he'd hidden even from himself. His voice cracked. That's exactly right. Lucky guess, Minseo said, but her tone had lost some of its edge. My turn, Sunja announced. She looked directly at Naomi and switched to Korean. 어디에서 한국말을 배웠어? Where did you learn Korean? Panic flared. Naomi's Korean was extremely limited. Basic phrases picked up from K-dramas and the occasional Korean household she'd cleaned. Nothing that would survive an actual conversation. She opened her mouth, scrambling for the few phrases she knew, when Min Jae smoothly interjected in Korean, "Halmiani, Naomi is still learning. She understands more than she speaks. Please be patient with her." But Sunja's eyes had sharpened with interest. She continued in Korean, speaking directly to Naomi, and though Naomi couldn't understand most of it, she caught certain words: love, truth, test. Then Sunja said something that made Min Jae's entire body go rigid. "Halmiani, that's not fair," he started. "Answer her," Jae-sung commanded. "If you're truly married, this should be easy." Min Jae looked at Naomi, conflict warring in his expression. Then in English he said quietly, "She asked how I proposed to you. She wants you to describe the moment, the location, what I said. Details only someone who was actually there would know." Naomi's heart hammered. They'd covered this in their backstory. Brooklyn Botanic Garden, cherry blossoms, private ceremony. But the level of detail Sunja was demanding would expose every gap in their fabricated history. Unless she gave them something real. It wasn't romantic, Naomi heard herself say. Not in the way proposals usually are. We were here in this penthouse at 2 a.m. Min Jae had just gotten off a call with your father, she looked at Jae-sung, about another woman he wanted Min Jae to meet. Another strategic match. Min Jae's eyes widened, but Naomi continued, building a story that felt true even though it was happening in real time. Min Jae was standing at those windows and he looked so tired. So defeated. I went to him and I said, "What do you want? Not what your father wants, not what's strategic or practical. What do you want?" She looked at Min Jae, finding his gaze locked on hers. And he said, "I want to choose. Just once, I want to choose something for myself." The penthouse was absolutely silent. So I asked him, "What would you choose?" And he turned to me and said, she paused, throat tight with emotion that felt dangerously real. He said, "I choose you. If I were brave enough to choose happiness over duty, I'd choose you." Min Jae had gone completely still, his expression stunned. "And I told him to be brave," Naomi finished softly. "So he was. He got down on one knee right there by the windows and asked me to help him choose himself. To build a life where he could be Min Jae, not just the Kang heir." She touched the rings on her finger. These were his grandmother's. He said she was the only person who ever let him choose, and he wanted her blessing on the one choice that mattered most. Sunja's eyes had grown suspiciously bright. She reached across the table and gripped Naomi's hand with surprising strength. "Aigu," she murmured, switching back to English. "My grandson finally found his spine. And a woman brave enough to help him straighten it." She squeezed Naomi's hand. You'll do just fine." Yoonhee was dabbing at her eyes with a napkin. Even Minseo looked grudgingly impressed. Only Jae-sung remained unmoved. A pretty story. But stories don't build empires. Min Jae, I'm giving you 1 week to annul this marriage and proceed with the song engagement. If you refuse, I'll remove you from your position here and recall you to Seoul permanently. No. Min Jae's voice was steel. I won't annul my marriage and I won't give up my life here. If you want to remove me from the company, that's your choice. But Naomi is my choice and I'm keeping her. The words hung in the air, a declaration and a line drawn. Jae-sung's face darkened with rage. He stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. You would throw away everything I've built? Everything I've sacrificed? You're asking me to throw away the only real thing in my life. Min Jae stood too, and Naomi saw 3 years of controlled resentment finally breaking free. I've done everything you asked, Appa. Everything. I studied what you wanted, worked where you wanted, lived how you wanted. But my marriage, my heart, that's mine. And you don't get to take it from me. Min Jae, Yoon-hee started. No, Yama. I love you, but I'm done. He looked at his father with something like pity. You married for strategy and spent 35 years resenting it. I'm not making the same mistake. Then you're no son of mine. The words fell like stones. Min Jae flinched. Naomi saw it, a brief flash of pain, but his voice remained steady. If that's how you feel, I accept it. Yeah. Soonja's cane hit the floor with a sharp crack. Enough. Both of you sit down. To Naomi's surprise, both men obeyed. Soonja commanded the kind of respect that transcended anger. Jae-sung, you're being a fool, she said bluntly. You had the chance to choose love and missed it. Your son is braver than you were. Don't punish him for that. Mother, this is business. This is fear, Soonja interrupted. Fear that if Min Jae chooses differently than you did, it means you were wrong. That you wasted your life on strategy when you could have had happiness. She looked at him with ancient eyes. But it's not too late to be wrong, my son. It's only too late when you make your children pay for your mistakes. Jae-sung's jaw worked. For a long moment, Naomi thought he might explode. Then slowly he sat back down. 1 month, he said finally. I'll give you 1 month to prove this marriage is real and not some scheme to avoid your responsibilities. If after 1 month I'm convinced, we'll renegotiate the song engagement. But if I find any evidence this is fake. His eyes bored into Naomi. You'll both regret it. It wasn't acceptance, but it was a reprieve. That's fair, Min Jae said, though his hand found Naomi's under the table and gripped it with crushing intensity. Good. Soonja smiled as if the emotional warfare of the last 10 minutes hadn't happened. Now let's eat before this excellent food gets cold. Naomi, tell me about your sister. Min Jae mentioned she's studying nursing. The conversation shifted to safer topics, but Naomi barely tasted her food. Her mind was reeling from everything that had just happened. The story she'd told about the proposal, it had felt so real in the moment. And the way Min Jae had looked at her, like she'd given voice to something he'd been too afraid to say. Was any of this still pretending? Or had they crossed some invisible line where fiction and reality blurred beyond recognition? After dinner. 2 hours later, the Kang family finally prepared to leave for their hotel. The meal had been an exhausting exercise in maintaining the performance, answering questions, navigating cultural expectations, and pretending that Jae-sung's ultimatum wasn't hanging over them like a guillotine. Soonja was the last to leave. She pulled Naomi aside near the elevator while Min Jae helped his mother with her coat. You told a good story tonight, the old woman said quietly in English. About the proposal. Very convincing. Naomi's blood ran cold. It was the truth. Was it? Soonja's eyes twinkled. Or was it the truth you wish had happened? Sometimes those are the same thing, child. Sometimes they're not. I don't. I know what my grandson is doing, Soonja interrupted gently. I've known him since birth. I know when he's being strategic and when he's being genuine. And tonight. She patted Naomi's cheek. Tonight he was both. That's the dangerous part. I don't understand. You will. Soonja glanced at Min Jae, who was now dealing with his father's continued cold disapproval. He asked you to pretend, didn't he? To be his wife for tonight, to help him escape an arrangement he didn't want. Naomi couldn't breathe, couldn't deny it. The old woman saw everything. I thought so. Soonja smiled. Here's what you don't know, child. My grandson doesn't ask for help. Ever. He's been self-sufficient since he was 12 years old, taking care of himself, never burdening anyone. If he asked you to pretend, it means you matter to him in ways he probably hasn't admitted even to himself. We barely know each other, Naomi whispered. And yet you know his deepest fear. And yet he looks at you like you're the first real thing he's seen in years. Soonja's expression turned serious. My son has given you 1 month. Use it wisely. Figure out if this is just pretending or if it's something worth making real. And if it is, real then fight for it. Soonja squeezed her hand. My grandson was named Min Jae. Brightness and talent. His parents hoped he would shine. But he's been dimmed by expectations for so long, I'd almost forgotten what he looks like when he's happy. Tonight with you I saw that light again. She turned toward the elevator where the others waited. Oh, and Naomi? Next time we meet I expect you to know more Korean. If you're going to be part of this family, you'll need to understand what we're saying about you. The elevator doors closed on Soonja's knowing smile. Naomi stood frozen, trying to process everything, until Min Jae's hand on her shoulder made her jump. They're gone, he said softly. You can breathe now. Naomi turned to find him looking as shell-shocked as she felt. His hair was disheveled from running his hands through it, his shirt was wrinkled and exhaustion lined his face. We survived, she managed. Barely. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. I'm so sorry, Naomi. My father, the ultimatum, all of it. This was supposed to be 6 hours and done. Now we have a month. She moved into the living room, suddenly desperate for space to think. 1 month to convince your father our marriage is real. Which it's not. Min Jae followed her. Which makes this impossible. Does it have to be impossible? The question escaped before Naomi could stop it. Min Jae froze. What? Your grandmother said something to me. About figuring out if this is just pretending or something real. Naomi turned to face him, heart pounding. Min Jae, what if we tried? Really tried? Tried what? Being married. For real. The words came out in a rush. Not pretending, not performing. Actually dating each other, getting to know each other, seeing if what we felt tonight during that kiss, during that story I told, if any of it could be real. Min Jae stared at her like she'd suggested jumping off the balcony. Naomi, you're not thinking clearly. You've had a traumatic evening. I'm thinking more clearly than I have in years. She moved closer to him. Min Jae, I know this is crazy. I know we're essentially strangers. But there's something here. You felt it too, I know you did. When you kissed me earlier, when I told that story about the proposal, when you defended me to your father. That was the performance. Was it? She challenged. When you said I'm the only person who sees you as Min Jae instead of the Kang heir, were you performing? When you held my hand under the table like I was the only thing keeping you grounded, was that fake? Min Jae's jaw clenched. Even if it wasn't, that doesn't mean, Naomi, you deserve someone who chooses you freely, not because he backed himself into a corner and needed an escape route. And you deserve someone who wants you to choose yourself, not another strategic arrangement. She closed the distance between them. We have 1 month. We're already wearing the rings. We've already told the story. Why not see if we can make it true? Because when it falls apart, I'll still owe you the other $25,000 and you'll go back to your life. His voice was raw. And I'll be alone again, except now I'll know exactly what I'm missing. The vulnerability in his words cracked something open in Naomi's chest. What if it doesn't fall apart? She whispered. What if this insane, impossible situation is exactly what we both needed? Min Jae raised his hand slowly, giving her time to pull away, and cupped her face. His thumb traced her cheekbone, and Naomi's eyes fluttered closed at the gentleness of the touch. You're dangerous, he murmured. You make me want things I have no right to want. Like what? Like this. He leaned in, and this time when he kissed her, there was no pretense of practice. No performance for watching families. Just Min Jae kissing Naomi like she was air and he was drowning, like she was the answer to questions he'd been asking his whole life. Naomi kissed him back with everything she had, all the fear and hope and desperate possibility that had been building since the moment she'd agreed to this insanity. Her hands slid into his hair, pulling him closer, and he made a sound low in his throat that sent heat spiraling through her entire body. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Min Jae rested his forehead against hers. 1 month, he said hoarsely. We try this for real for 1 month. But Naomi, I need you to understand, if we do this I'm all in. I don't know how to do anything halfway. Good, she breathed. Neither do I. He smiled and it transformed his entire face. Then I guess we're really married, Mrs. Kang. I guess we are, Mr. Kang. They stood there in the middle of his penthouse. Now their penthouse, wrapped in each other, the city glittering beyond the windows like a promise of all the impossible things that might come true. Neither of them saw Minseo standing in the building's lobby, her phone pressed to her ear, speaking rapidly in Korean to someone who would be very interested in her suspicions about her brother's sudden marriage. Neither of them knew that choosing to make their pretend marriage real would paint a target on both their backs. But for now, in this moment, they had each other. And that felt like enough. Naomi woke up to unfamiliar softness. The sheets beneath her were Egyptian cotton with a thread count she couldn't even fathom. The pillow cradled her head like a cloud. And the sunrise streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows painted Manhattan in shades of gold and rose that seemed almost unreal. For a disorienting moment she forgot where she was. Then memory crashed back. The desperate proposal, the family dinner, the decision to make this marriage real, and she sat bolt upright. The guest room door was cracked open. She could hear movement in the kitchen, the clink of dishes, and smell something incredible cooking. Coffee and something else, something that made her stomach growl despite her nerves. She'd stayed in the guest room last night. After that devastating kiss, after agreeing to try this for real, they'd both stepped back from the edge of something that felt too intense too fast. Min Jae had insisted she take the master bedroom, but Naomi had refused. If they were going to do this, they'd do it honestly, which meant not rushing into more than either was ready for. Now, in the clear light of morning, the whole thing felt impossible again. Naomi found her phone on the nightstand, 3:47 a.m. when she'd finally fallen asleep, and now it was barely 6:30. She had 17 missed texts from her sister Maya, each one more panicked than the last. Where are you? You missed your shift at the hotel, Naomi. This isn't like you. I'm calling the police. Answer your phone. Guilt crashed over her. In the chaos of yesterday, she'd completely forgotten to tell Maya anything. Her sister was probably losing her mind. Naomi typed quickly, I'm okay. Something came up. Can I call you in an hour? I promise I'll explain everything. The response was immediate. You better. I was this close to filing a missing persons report. Naomi pulled on the clothes she'd worn yesterday. The emerald dress now felt like costume from another life, and ventured out into the main living space. Min Jae stood at the stove, dressed in worn jeans and a t-shirt that clung to his lean frame in ways his business attire never revealed. His hair was damp from a shower, falling into his eyes as he focused on whatever he was cooking. He looked younger like this. More approachable. Devastatingly attractive in a way that made Naomi's mouth go dry. He glanced up as she entered and his entire face brightened. You're awake. I wasn't sure if you'd want Korean breakfast or something more American, so I made both. There's pajuk, rice porridge, and also scrambled eggs with toast. Coffee's fresh. I remember you take it with cream and 2 sugars. The casual domesticity of it. Him remembering how she took her coffee, making her breakfast, looking genuinely happy to see her, felt more intimate than the kiss they'd shared last night. You didn't have to do all this, Naomi said, moving to the kitchen island where he'd set out an elaborate spread. I wanted to. Min Jae poured her coffee, preparing it exactly how she liked it. Besides, cooking helps me think. And I've been doing a lot of thinking since 5:30 this morning. Naomi accepted the mug, their fingers brushing. The contact sent electricity up her arm. About how we make this work. He gestured to the stools at the island. Sit. And let's figure out the logistics of being married. Over breakfast, the pajuk was incredible, comforting and perfect. They began the practical work of combining their lives. You'll need to move in here officially, Min Jae said. My father will definitely have someone watching to verify we're actually living together. That means you'll need to bring your things, establish a routine, make this space feel like home. I have a lease on my apartment. And my sister will handle your lease. Buy it out if necessary. He pulled out his phone, already making notes. And Maya? She's welcome here too if she wants. There are 3 bedrooms. She could have her own space, save money while finishing nursing school. Naomi's throat tightened. Min Jae, that's too much. It's not. He looked up, eyes serious. If we're doing this, we're really doing it. That means your family is my family. Your responsibilities are my responsibilities. Maya is important to you, which makes her important to me. You haven't even met her. Then introduce us. He smiled. I'd like to meet the person who matters most to you. The simple certainty in his voice, like caring about the people she loved, was the most natural thing in the world, made Naomi's chest ache with possibility. There's more, Min Jae continued. My assistant Jessica will help you with the transition, closing out your cleaning jobs, handling any paperwork. You'll need a new phone on my family plan so my father can verify we're in constant contact. And, he hesitated. This is going to sound controlling, but I need you to have security. Security. A driver at minimum. Maybe a bodyguard. He saw her expression and rushed to explain. Naomi, I'm the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company's North American operations. I have rivals, competitors, people who would love to find leverage against me. Now that my family knows about you, that information will spread. You're visible in ways you weren't before. The reality of what she'd agreed to settled over Naomi like a weight. I can't just have bodyguards following me around. I have a life, Min Jae. Friends, places I go. I know. And I'm not trying to control you. I'm trying to keep you safe. He reached across the island, taking her hand. Please. At least accept a driver. Someone who can make sure you get where you're going safely. Naomi wanted to argue, but the genuine worry in his eyes stopped her. Hey. A driver. But no bodyguard unless it becomes actually necessary. Deal. Relief flooded his features. And one more thing, we should probably tell people the real story. Your sister, my assistant, anyone who needs to know the truth about how this started. Your grandmother already figured it out, Naomi said. Or close enough. How Miani figures out everything. It's her superpower. Min Jae smiled. But she gave us her blessing anyway. That's what matters. They spent the next hour planning. Naomi would move in over the weekend. They'd go shopping together for anything she needed to make the space comfortable. They'd have dinner with Maya so Min Jae could properly meet her. They'd establish routines. Breakfast together when possible, dinners at least 3 times a week, Sunday mornings reserved for just them. It felt surreal planning a marriage like it was a business venture. But beneath the logistics, Naomi felt something else building. Anticipation, possibility, the terrifying hope that this might actually work. I should call Maya, Naomi said finally. Before she actually does file that missing persons report. Use my office. It's private. Min Jae stood gathering dishes. And Naomi? Thank you. For what? For giving this a chance. For not running screaming when you realized how complicated my life is. His smile was crooked, vulnerable. For making me believe even for a moment that I might get to choose happiness. Before Naomi could respond, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. We need to talk about your arrangement with Kang Min Jae. Today. Or everyone learns the truth about your fake marriage. The blood drained from Naomi's face. Min Jae saw her expression and was at her side instantly. What's wrong? She showed him the message. His jaw tightened, eyes going cold in a way that reminded her he wasn't just a lonely man looking for connection. He was a corporate CEO who'd navigated cutthroat business politics for years. Someone knows, he said quietly. Someone figured out we weren't really married when this started. He took the phone, studying the number. I don't recognize this. Do you? Naomi shook her head, heart hammering. Another text came through. Columbus Park. 9 a.m. Come alone or I share everything with your father-in-law. You're not going alone, Min Jae said immediately. If they see you. I don't care. His hand found hers, grip fierce. Naomi, we're in this together now. Whatever this is, we face it together. The blackmail. Columbus Park in Chinatown was already busy at 9 a.m. on a Saturday morning. Elderly Chinese immigrants practicing Tai Chi, families with children feeding pigeons, the smell of dim sum from nearby restaurants mixing with car exhaust and the salt breeze from the East River. Naomi sat on a bench near the basketball courts, Min Jae standing just out of sight behind a nearby pavilion. They'd argued about his presence the entire drive over, but he'd been immovable. If someone was threatening her, he wasn't letting her face it alone. The driver, a stoic man named Mr. Chin who Min Jae assured her was former military and completely trustworthy, waited in the car, ready to intervene if things went wrong. At 9:03, a woman approached the bench. She was young, maybe mid-20s, dressed in designer clothes that screamed money, and carried herself with the kind of confidence that came from never having to worry about consequences. Naomi recognized her immediately from the photos Min Jae had shown her during their frantic preparation yesterday. Song Hae-won. The woman Min Jae was supposed to marry. "You're the maid," Hae-won said in perfect English, sitting down without invitation. "The one he hired to play his wife. I have to admit, it's more creative than I expected from Min Jae. He usually lacks imagination." Naomi's mind raced. "I don't know what you're talking about. Please." Hae-won's smile was sharp. "I have the receipt from the cleaning company showing you've serviced his penthouse twice a week for 3 years. I have the contract your boss signed when you suddenly quit yesterday with no notice. And I have a very interesting conversation I recorded yesterday with a woman named Sarah Mitchell, your best friend, I believe, who was very worried about you accepting a job from a crime boss who was paying you $50,000 to pretend to be his date." Naomi's stomach dropped. She told Sarah about Min Jae being dangerous, about the money, about the arrangement. Not in detail, but enough that someone skilled at extracting information could piece together the truth. "What do you want?" Naomi asked flatly. "What I was promised." Hae-won leaned back entirely at ease. "Marriage to Kang Min Jae. My family's manufacturing business needs the Kang connection to survive. His father promised me that marriage 3 years ago. I've been patient, but now your little performance is threatening everything I've worked for. You don't love him." "Love?" Hae-won laughed. "Love is a fairy tale sold to poor people to make them feel better about their circumstances. I respect Min Jae. I could be a good partner to him. And more importantly, our marriage would save my family from bankruptcy." There was desperation beneath the polished exterior. Naomi saw it now. The designer clothes that were last season's style, the handbag that was real but worn, the jewelry that had been pawned and redeemed enough times to lose its shine. "You're in trouble," Naomi said quietly. "My father made bad investments. The kind that attract dangerous people who want their money back." Hae-won's mask slipped for just a moment. "The Kang connection is the only thing keeping them from," she cut herself off. "That's not your concern. Here's what is. You end this fake marriage. Today. Annul it, admit it was a scheme, whatever you need to do. Give me what was promised. Or I send everything I know to Kang Jae-sung and the press. And if we don't? Then Min Jae's father disowns him. The scandal destroys his career. And you?" Hae-won's smile turned vicious. "You go back to cleaning toilets, except now you'll be infamous. The maid who tried to trap a chaebol heir. Good luck finding work after that." Every word was a carefully aimed knife. "How did you find me?" Naomi asked. "How did you know about the arrangement?" "Min Seo." Hae-won examined her manicured nails. "She called me last night. She suspected something was off about the sudden marriage, so she did some digging. Found the cleaning company connection, reached out to your friend, put the pieces together. She gave me everything as a courtesy, one spurned bride-to-be to another. Min Jae's sister. Of course." The calculating look in her eyes last night hadn't been about approval. It had been assessment. 24 hours, Hae-won said, standing. "End this marriage or I destroy both of you." She walked away, heels clicking against the pavement with staccato finality. Min Jae emerged from his hiding spot the moment she was out of sight. His face was ashen. "My sister gave her everything. My own sister is trying to sabotage me." "She probably thinks she's protecting you," Naomi said, though the betrayal in his eyes made her chest ache. "From someone she thinks is using you. But you're not." He sat heavily beside her on the bench. "Or you weren't. God, this is such a mess." They sat in silence, watching children play basketball, elderly couples walk hand in hand, life continuing around them while their carefully constructed world fell apart. "We could tell your father the truth," Naomi said finally. "Explain that we started as an arrangement but decided to make it real. He wanted a month to evaluate our marriage. Maybe honesty would. He'd never believe us." Min Jae's voice was hollow. "He'd see it as exactly what it looks like. Me lying and manipulating to get out of my responsibilities. And Hae-won's threat to go to the press? That would destroy more than just me. It would damage the company, hurt my mother and grandmother, give my father exactly the ammunition he needs to remove me permanently. So what do we do?" Min Jae turned to her, and the intensity in his eyes made her breath catch. We call her bluff. What? Think about it, Naomi. Haewon needs this marriage more than we need to hide. She exposes us, she loses too. My father won't arrange another match for me, he'll be too angry at being deceived. And her family's financial troubles? They'll still exist, except now she won't have any solution. Unless she's desperate enough not to care about consequences, Naomi countered. Then we make sure she has something to care about. He pulled out his phone, typing rapidly. My assistant has connections. We find out exactly who Haewon's family owes money to and what kind of trouble they're in. Then we offer her a different solution. Like what? Like me brokering a deal that solves her family's financial problems without requiring marriage. Kang Industries has subsidiaries, partnerships, investment opportunities. I can't promise marriage, but I can promise I'll help her family if she backs off. It was strategic, calculating, exactly the kind of corporate maneuvering that had probably made Min Jae successful. But it also felt uncomfortably like what his father would do, treating relationships like business transactions. Is that who you want to be? Naomi asked quietly. Someone who solves every problem through deals and leverage? Min Jae's hands stilled on his phone. He looked at her for a long moment. No. But I don't know what else to do. How do you fight someone who's holding all the cards? You tell the truth. The words surprised Naomi as much as they seemed to surprise him. Not to Haewon. To your father. You tell him everything, that you asked me to pretend, that we decided to make it real, that we're trying to build something genuine even though it started as a lie. You tell him and let him make his choice. He'll remove me from the company. Maybe. Or maybe he'll respect you for being honest. For choosing integrity over manipulation. Naomi took his hand. Min Jae, you told me last night that you're all in, that you don't do anything halfway. Does that include being honest about who we are and how this started? He stared at their joined hands, at the rings that had belonged to his grandmother, at the physical representation of promises they were still learning how to keep. I'm terrified, he admitted. Of losing everything. Of disappointing my family. His voice cracked. Of you realizing this is too complicated and walking away. I'm terrified too, Naomi said. But we said we'd try this for real. That means being real. Messy, complicated, honest reality. Not another performance. Min Jae closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, they held resignation and something that looked like relief. Hey, we tell my father the truth. Together. Together, Naomi agreed. He kissed her then, soft and desperate, like she was the only solid thing in his shifting world. Maybe she was. Maybe they were each other's gravity, pulling them toward something real in a world built on strategic lies. When they pulled apart, Min Jae's phone was ringing. His father's name flashed on the screen. Too late for planning, he muttered. He's calling us now. Naomi's heart jumped into her throat. Answer it. Min Jae did, putting it on speaker. Appa. My office. 1 hour. Jae-sung's voice was ice. Both of you. We need to discuss some very interesting information I received this morning about the true nature of your marriage. The line went dead. They stared at each other, the weight of impending confrontation settling over them. She did it, Naomi whispered. Haewon already told him. Or Minseo did. Min Jae stood, pulling her up with him. Either way, this is happening. Right now. As they walked back to the car, Naomi's phone buzzed with a text from Maya. Whatever you're dealing with, I'm here. Love you, sis. The message made Naomi's eyes sting. Because she'd spent so long keeping people at arm's length, staying invisible, never asking for help. But Min Jae had asked, desperately, honestly, and it had led here. To risk and possibility and the terrifying prospect of being truly seen. Whatever happens, Min Jae said as they slid into the car, I'm glad I asked you. Even if this falls apart, even if my father destroys me, I'm glad I chose you. We chose each other, Naomi corrected. And we're not done fighting yet. Mr. Chin pulled into traffic, carrying them toward Kang Industries' Manhattan headquarters and whatever judgment awaited them there. The pretending was over. Now came the hardest part, making everyone else believe that what they'd built on a foundation of lies could somehow become real. Kang Industries' North American headquarters occupied 30 floors of a glass tower in Midtown Manhattan. Naomi had passed the building 1,000 times on her way to various cleaning jobs, never imagining she'd one day walk through its sleek lobby as the CEO's wife. The security guards recognized Min Jae immediately, bowing slightly as they passed. Naomi felt their curious gazes following her. The unknown woman beside their boss, clearly not dressed for a business meeting in yesterday's clothes and minimal makeup. The elevator ride to the 30th floor felt like ascending to an execution. Min Jae's hand never left hers, but she could feel the tension radiating from him. His jaw was clenched so tight she worried about his teeth. The carefully controlled mask he wore in public had settled over his features, but his eyes were storms of fear and resignation. "Whatever happens," Naomi said quietly, "we tell the truth. All of it. No more performances." "No more performances," he agreed, though his voice was hollow. The elevator doors opened directly into a reception area that screamed corporate power. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Manhattan, modern art that probably cost more than houses lined the walls, and the furniture was the kind of minimalist expensive that made visitors feel small. A stern-looking secretary looked up from her desk. "Mr. Kang is expecting you. Conference room A. Everyone is already assembled." "Everyone?" The word made Naomi's stomach drop. "Who's everyone?" Min Jae asked sharply. "Your parents, your grandmother, Miss Song Hae-won, and..." The secretary consulted her computer. "A Ms. Kang Min Jae joined via video call from Seoul 10 minutes ago. The whole family. Plus the woman blackmailing them." This wasn't just a confrontation, it was a tribunal. Min Jae's hand tightened painfully on Naomi's. For a moment she thought he might turn around, might run, might choose escape over facing the judgment of everyone who mattered to him. Instead he straightened his shoulders, lifted his chin, and walked toward conference room A like he was walking into battle. The room was massive, dominated by a table that could seat 20. But only 6 chairs were occupied, Jae-sung at the head like a judge, Yoon-hee beside him with an expression that gave nothing away, Soon-ja near the windows with her cane resting against her chair, and Hae-won sitting with perfect posture and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. On the large screen mounted on the wall, Min Seo's face watched them with calculating interest. "Sit," Jae-sung commanded. Min Jae guided Naomi to chairs across from Hae-won. They sat together, hands still joined on top of the table where everyone could see. "Song Hae-won has brought some very disturbing allegations to my attention," Jae-sung began without preamble. "She claims your marriage is a fabrication. That you hired Naomi, your cleaning woman, to pose as your wife to avoid the engagement arrangement I'd made. Is it true?" Yoon-hee's voice was quieter than her husband's, but somehow more devastating. "Did you lie to us, Min Jae?" This was the moment. Truth or more lies? Safety or risk? Min Jae looked at Naomi and she saw her own fear reflected in his eyes. Then he squeezed her hand once and turned to face his father. "Yes," he said clearly. "It's true. I asked Naomi to pretend to be my wife for one night. I offered her $50,000 to help me avoid the engagement dinner you'd arranged without my knowledge or consent." The silence that followed was deafening. Hae-won's smile widened with triumph. Min Seo's expression on the screen remained unreadable. Yoon-hee's hand went to her mouth. "And Jae-sung's face turned to stone. "You dared," he started, voice rising. "But that's not the whole truth," Min Jae interrupted, and his voice carried a strength Naomi had never heard before. "The arrangement was for one night. One dinner, one performance, and then we'd go our separate ways. Except that's not what happened." He looked at Naomi and the raw emotion in his gaze made her breath catch. "What happened was I spent 6 hours with someone who saw me, really saw me for the first time in my life. Someone who didn't want anything from me except for me to be happy. Someone brave enough to walk into my complicated world and tell my father that I deserved to choose myself." Min Jae turned back to Jae-sung. "So yes, it started as a lie. As manipulation. As exactly the kind of strategic maneuvering you taught me to value. But then Naomi and I decided to make it real. To actually try being married, to see if what we felt during that one night of pretending could become something genuine." "How convenient," Hae-won interjected. "You got caught in your lie, so now it's suddenly real? Do you expect anyone to believe that?" "I don't care if anyone believes it," Min Jae said flatly. "I know what I feel. I know that for the first time in 34 years I woke up this morning and felt happy. I know that Naomi makes me want to be brave enough to choose what I want instead of what's expected. And I know," his voice cracked slightly, I know that losing her would hurt more than losing my position, my inheritance, or your approval. The words landed like grenades. Jae-sung stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. You would throw away everything I built for a woman you've known for less than 24 hours? I've known her for 3 years, Appa. I've watched her work with quiet dignity, treat everyone with respect, and maintain her integrity even when no one was watching. I just wasn't brave enough to see what was right in front of me until yesterday. This is insanity. This is love, Yoon-hee said quietly. Everyone turned to stare at her. She stood slowly, moving around the table until she stood beside her son. I know what it looks like when someone is lying about their feelings, Jae-sung. I spent the first 5 years of our marriage watching you fake affection while resenting the woman your mother forced you to marry. Her voice was calm, but steel ran beneath it. I also know what real love looks like. And when I watched Min Jae with Naomi last night, I saw real love. Messy, new, terrifying, but real. Yoon-hee, Jae-sung started. No. She held up a hand. You made me marry you because your mother gave you no choice. And you've spent 35 years proving you could turn a forced marriage into a successful partnership. But at what cost? Our son grew up watching you treat relationships like business transactions. Is it any wonder he learned to do the same? She looked at Min Jae with eyes full of complicated emotion. What you did was wrong. Lying to us, manipulating the situation, asking this young woman to participate in your deception. All of it was wrong. I know, Min Jae began. But it was also brave, Yoon-hee continued. You could have gone through with the engagement to Haewon. You could have done what was expected, what was safe, what we'd done. Instead, you took a desperate chance at choosing yourself. That takes courage I'm not sure I had at your age. He turned to Jae-sung. Our son is asking for what we never gave him, the freedom to choose his own path. Even if that path started with a lie, it's become something real. Can't you see that? What I see, Jae-sung said coldly, is a son who thinks he can manipulate his way out of responsibilities. What happens when the next difficult situation arises? Does he hire another actress? Tell another convenient story? What happens, Naomi said, her voice cutting through the tension, is that he has someone beside him who won't let him take the easy way out. All eyes turned to her. She stood, still holding Min Jae's hand, and faced his father directly. Mr. Kang, you're right to be angry. What we did was manipulative and dishonest. I accepted money to pretend to be someone's wife. That makes me complicit in the deception. Then you admit, Haewon started. I'm not finished, Naomi said sharply. Yes, it started as a transaction. But do you know what happened during that dinner last night? I watched your son defend me to you. I watched him choose his own happiness over your approval for the first time in his life. And I watched your wife, your mother, and even your daughter see something in us that you're too angry to recognize. She stepped closer to Jae-sung, unafraid. You want to know if this is real? Here's how you know. I'm standing here knowing you could destroy my life with a single phone call, knowing the media would crucify me as the maid who tried to trap a chaebol heir, knowing I could lose everything, and I'm still telling you that I'm keeping your son. Not his money, not his position, not his name. Him. Min Jae. The man who makes me laugh and challenges me and makes me want to be braver than I've ever been. The room was absolutely silent. So yes, we lied, Naomi finished. But we're telling you the truth now. We want to make this marriage real. We want the chance to build something genuine. And if you can't accept that, then we'll walk away from all of this. The company, the inheritance, the family approval, and build a life that's ours. Jae-sung stared at her for a long moment. Then unexpectedly he laughed. It was a harsh, bitter sound. You remind me of someone, he said finally. Someone who stood up to me 35 years ago and told me I could either accept that I was married to her or live the rest of my life being miserable about it. He looked at Yoon-hee and something passed between them. Decades of history, of compromise, of forced partnership becoming genuine love. Mother did force us together, he admitted quietly. And you're right, I resented it. For years I resented it. But then one day I looked at you, really looked at you, and realized the woman I'd been forced to marry was the best thing that ever happened to me. Yoon-hee's eyes glistened. Jae-sung. He held up a hand. I don't like being manipulated, Min Jae. I don't like being lied to. And I especially don't like having my carefully laid plans disrupted. I know, Appa. But, Jae-sung moved to stand in front of his son. I also don't want you to spend 35 years resenting a marriage I forced you into. Even if the alternative is messy and complicated and started with the worst possible foundation. Hope flickered in Min Jae's eyes. Does that mean? It means I'm giving you your month, Fizung said. 1 month to prove this marriage can be real. But there are conditions. Anything, Min Jae said immediately. Naomi moves into the penthouse officially. You attend marriage counseling, real counseling, not pretending. You work on building a genuine relationship with transparency and honesty. And, he looked at Naomi. You sign a post-nuptial agreement. Naomi's stomach dropped. A post-nup. To protect you, not us, Yoonhee interjected quickly. If this doesn't work out, if you decide to leave, we want to ensure you're not left with nothing. The agreement would guarantee financial security regardless of what happens. It was unexpected. Generous even. Not the attack Naomi had anticipated. I don't need, she started. You do, Soonja spoke for the first time, her voice carrying across the room. Because my grandson comes with complications you're only beginning to understand. Rivals, enemies, people who will target you to hurt him. If you're going to be part of this family, you need protection. Legal protection, financial protection, and, she smiled slightly. The knowledge that we take care of our own. Even when our former cleaning ladies who lied their way in? Naomi couldn't help asking. Especially then, Soonja said firmly. You had the courage to admit the lie and the strength to try making it true. That's more integrity than most people who marry into this family already possessing. On the screen, Minseo spoke for the first time. For the record, I didn't give Hae-won the information to sabotage you, Appa. I gave it to her because I wanted to see what you'd do when confronted. Whether you double down on the lie or finally be honest. Min Jae stared at his sister's image. You set up a test? We all did, Minseo admitted. Halmiani Iyama and I discussed it last night after we left. We suspected the marriage wasn't entirely what you claimed, but we also saw how you looked at each other. We wanted to know if it was real or if you were just good actors. And the verdict? Min Jae's voice was cautious. You're terrible actors, Minseo said bluntly. But your feelings are real. Anyone can see that. So this entire confrontation was, Naomi looked around the room in disbelief. A way to make you both admit the truth, Yoonhee confirmed. We needed you to stop performing and start being honest. With us and with each other. And I agreed to participate, Hae-won said, drawing everyone's attention, because your family offered me something better than marriage to a man who doesn't love me. She stood, moving to stand beside Jae-sung. Kang Industries is investing in my family's manufacturing business. A partnership that will stabilize our finances and pay off our debts without requiring me to marry someone I don't love. In exchange, I agreed to be part of this. She gestured around the room. Intervention. You knew. Min Jae looked between them all. Everyone knew? Not everyone, Soonja corrected. Your father didn't know until this morning. The rest of us figured it out last night and decided to force your hand. Sometimes the truth needs a push. Naomi's legs suddenly felt weak. She sank into her chair, mind reeling. So none of this was, we weren't actually. Oh, you were absolutely in danger of being exposed, Yoonhee said. Minseo's investigation was real. Hae-won's financial troubles are real. Your father's anger. She looked at her husband. That was real too. But we decided to handle it as a family instead of letting it explode publicly. Jae-sung moved to sit down, suddenly looking exhausted. My mother convinced me that destroying my son's attempt at happiness, however messily it started, would be the worst mistake I could make. And your wife. He looked at Min Jae. She spoke passionately about your right to choose love even when it's complicated. So what happens now? Min Jae asked, his voice small. Now you have 1 month, Jae-sung repeated. 1 month to build a real marriage. To go to counseling, to learn each other, to figure out if what you feel in these early days can sustain the reality of combining your lives. If at the end of that month you both still want this, we'll support you fully. If not, he shrugged. The post-nup ensures you both walk away protected. And Hae-won. Naomi looked at the other woman. Goes back to Seoul with her family's financial future secured, Hae-won said. And perhaps starts looking for someone who actually wants to marry her instead of someone forced into it. He smiled, and for the first time it looked genuine. For what it's worth, Naomi, I hope you make it. Min Jae needs someone who fights for him. I would have been a terrible wife because I only wanted the position, not the person. She gathered her bag and moved toward the door. Good luck. You're going to need it. After she left, the room felt both larger and more intimate. A family, complicated and messy, trying to navigate the space between expectation and love. I'm sorry, Min Jae said quietly. To all of you. For lying, for manipulating, for being human. Yoonhee moved to embrace her son. For making mistakes while trying to find happiness. Min Jae, we're not angry that you lied. We're angry that you felt you had to. She pulled back, gripping his shoulders. Your father and I failed you if we made you think manipulation was your only option. We should have given you the freedom to choose your own path long ago. I'm not good at admitting when I'm wrong, Jae-sung said gruffly. But your mother is right. I pushed too hard, expected too much, and gave you too little space to become your own man. If this marriage, however it started, is helping you find yourself, then I won't stand in your way. Soonja tapped her cane on the floor. Enough apologizing. You've all been appropriately emotional. Now Naomi, come here. Naomi approached cautiously. The old woman studied her with those knowing eyes. You'll have dinner at my hotel tomorrow night, Soonja commanded. Just you and me. I want to know who you really are when you're not performing for my family or trying to save my grandson. Yes, how meany, Naomi managed. Good. Soonja smiled. And start learning Korean properly. I have things to teach you that can't be translated. On the screen, Minseo laughed. How Myeoni's adopting her. You're really part of the family now, Naomi. My condolences. The tension in the room finally broke. Yoonhee was dabbing at her eyes again. Jae-sung actually smiled. Small but real. And Min Jae pulled Naomi against his side, holding her like she might disappear if he let go. Thank you, he said to his family. For the second chance. For understanding. For loving you even when you're being an idiot? Minseo suggested. That's what families do, Appa. We show up, we call you on your bullshit, and we help you fix it. Language, Yoonhee chided, but she was smiling. They spent another hour in that conference room, not as interrogators and accused, but as a family figuring out how to incorporate a new member. Naomi answered questions about her background, her sister, her dreams. Min Jae's family shared stories that painted a fuller picture of who he'd been before corporate expectations had consumed him. By the time they left, Naomi's head was spinning with names, history, expectations, and the surreal reality that she'd somehow become part of this complicated, powerful, surprisingly warm family. 1 month later. The Brooklyn Botanic Garden was in full bloom, cherry blossoms creating clouds of pink and white against the brilliant May sky. Couples strolled hand in hand, families picnicked on the grass, and photographers captured the fleeting beauty of spring in New York. Naomi and Min Jae walked slowly along the paths, fingers intertwined, comfortable in the silence that had become familiar over the past month. So much had changed. Naomi had moved into the penthouse officially, and they'd spent weeks learning to navigate shared space. Min Jae was meticulous about his morning routine but helpless in the evening. Naomi was a night owl who functioned on coffee and willpower until noon. They'd had arguments about thermostat settings, grocery shopping preferences, and whose turn it was to call Maya back. They'd also had marriage counseling every Tuesday and Thursday. Dr. Patricia Chin was a no-nonsense therapist who specialized in cross-cultural relationships and didn't let them hide behind politeness. She'd made them discuss expectations, family pressures, their individual traumas, and the unique complications of building a real relationship on a foundation of lies. It had been exhausting. Emotional. Occasionally brutal. It had also been necessary. Your grandmother wants us to visit Seoul this summer, Min Jae said, breaking the comfortable silence. She's planning some kind of official family gathering to introduce you to the extended relatives. How terrifying should I expect that to be? On a scale of 1 to 10? He considered. Probably a solid 8. But how Myeoni likes you, which means everyone else will fall in line eventually. They reached a bench near the cherry blossom trees and sat. This spot, according to their fabricated story, was where Min Jae had proposed. Now, a month into their real marriage, it felt appropriate to return. Dr. Chin asked me something yesterday, Naomi said. In our individual session. She asked if I'd stay married to you if your father decided to cut you off completely. If there was no company, no inheritance, no family approval. Just you. Min Jae went very still beside her. What did you say? I said yes. She looked at him, finding his dark eyes fixed on her with intensity. Because somewhere in this past month, between the arguments about dish soap brands and the therapy sessions and learning to say, I love you in Korean, I fell in love with you. Actually in love, not pretend in love. Sarangi, Min Jae murmured. That's how you say it. Sarangi, Naomi. Sarangi, she repeated, the syllables still clumsy in her mouth. See? I'm learning. You're doing more than learning. He shifted to face her fully. You're transforming everything. My penthouse feels like a home now. My mornings don't feel empty. And when I come back from difficult meetings, I actually look forward to telling someone about them because you listen like my problems matter. They do matter. Because you make them matter. He reached into his jacket pocket. Which is why I wanted to bring you here today. To this place where we supposedly got engaged, to do something I should have done the first time. He slid off the bench and got down on one knee. Naomi's breath caught. Min Jae were already married. Married based on a lie and a desperate arrangement, he interrupted. I want to do this right, Naomi. I want to ask you properly, honestly, with no audience and no performance. Just us. He pulled out a small box, not the one that had held his grandmother's rings but something new. Inside was a simple gold band, elegant and understated, with Korean characters engraved on the inside. It says, New Beginning, Min Jae explained. Because that's what you gave me. A chance to start over, to choose differently, to build something real. Tears blurred Naomi's vision. We're already wearing wedding rings. Those belong to my past. This belongs to our future. He took her left hand where his grandmother's rings still sat. Naomi Carter, I'm not offering you money or a performance or a solution to my family problems. I'm offering you me, complicated, flawed, still learning how to be brave. Will you stay married to me? Will you build this messy, beautiful life with me? Will you be my wife for real this time, with all the love and commitment I should have offered from the beginning? Naomi was crying openly now, not caring that people were watching, that someone was probably recording this on their phone. Yes. God yes. Sarangi Min Jae. He slipped the new ring onto her finger, above his grandmother's rings, past, present and future stacked together. Then he stood and kissed her, soft and thorough and full of promises they were finally ready to keep. When they broke apart, a small crowd had gathered, applauding. Min Jae laughed, that free, genuine sound Naomi had grown to love, and tucked her against his side. Should we tell them we're already married? He murmured. And ruin their cute proposal story? Naomi grinned. Never. They walked back through the gardens hand in hand, and Naomi's phone buzzed with a text from Maya. How's the romantic garden date with your husband? Still can't believe my sister married a C. Bring him to dinner tomorrow. Mom's jerk chicken recipe. No excuses. Another text followed immediately. Also, Dad called from his new number. He heard about your marriage through the family grapevine and wants money. I told him to fuck off. You're welcome. Naomi showed Min Jae the messages. His expression darkened at the mention of her estranged father. Do we need to worry about him causing problems? She noted. The automatic assumption that her problems were his problems too. A month ago that would have felt suffocating. Now it felt like partnership. He's been out of our lives for 16 years, Naomi said. If he shows up looking for money, we'll deal with it together. Together, Min Jae agreed. Though I have to admit, I'm more nervous about Maya's jerk chicken than your deadbeat father. Your sister terrifies me. She's supposed to. That's her job. Naomi squeezed his hand. But she likes you. She told me you're acceptable for a rich guy who doesn't understand how the subway works. I understand the subway. You thought you needed to tip the conductor, Min Jae. That was one time. Their bickering carried them back to the car where Mr. Chin waited with his usual stoic patience. The drive back to their penthouse, their home, was comfortable, filled with easy conversation about dinner plans and whether they should accept Soonja's invitation to Seoul. When they walked through the door, Naomi was struck again by how much the space had changed. Her books mixed with his on the shelves. Her plants brought life to the stark modern aesthetic. Photos from their actual month together, not the photoshopped fakes but real captured moments, decorated the surfaces. I need to tell you something, Min Jae said as they kicked off their shoes. My father called this morning. Naomi's stomach tightened. And? He's satisfied that our marriage is real. He's officially withdrawing his ultimatum and supporting us fully. Min Jae's smile was complicated. He also apologized. Actually apologized for pushing me toward marriage without considering what I wanted. That's huge. It is. He pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers. It's also terrifying because now there's no external pressure holding us together. We're choosing this entirely on our own. Is that scary? Petrifying, he admitted. What if I'm bad at being a real husband? What if you wake up one day and realize you could have done so much better than a CEO with family issues and a tendency to work 80-hour weeks? Naomi cupped his face, making him look at her. Then we'll work on it in therapy. We'll have arguments and make mistakes and figure it out together. Because that's what real marriage is, Min Jae. Not performance, not perfection, just two people choosing each other even when it's hard. When did you get so wise? When I married a man who taught me that taking risks on impossible things sometimes leads to magic. He kissed her then, deep and slow, and Naomi felt the truth of it settle into her bones. This was real. This messy, complicated, beautiful relationship built on the worst possible foundation had somehow become the best thing in her life. When they finally pulled apart, Min Jae's expression was mischievous. So about Maya's dinner tomorrow, should I bring wine? Flowers? A bribe? Bring yourself. And maybe practice your Korean. She's been taking lessons too and wants to test her skills on you. Your sister is learning Korean? She's thinking about working at a hospital in Koreatown after graduation. Says the pay is better and, Naomi grinned. She wants to be able to talk to your grandmother without me translating. She's already planning to join the family long-term? The Carters don't do anything halfway, Naomi said. When we commit, we're all in. Good. Min Jae pulled her toward the kitchen. Because I was thinking about what you said, about your dream of opening a restaurant that serves fusion cuisine. I want to help you do that. Not as a rich husband throwing money at problems, but as a partner investing in your dreams. Naomi's throat tightened. Min Jae. I mean it. We could start small. Maybe a pop-up first, test the concept. You've been taking those business classes online. Put them to use. Build something that's entirely yours. It was everything she dreamed about and never thought possible. You really believe I could do it? I believe you could do anything. His voice was absolutely certain. You convinced my entire family that a marriage built on lies could become real. A restaurant? That's easy compared to what you've already accomplished. Naomi kissed him, pouring every ounce of gratitude and love into it. When she pulled back, she was smiling through tears. How did this happen? How did we go from a desperate arrangement to this? We chose each other, Min Jae said simply. Every day for a month we woke up and chose each other. That's how anything real gets built, one choice at a time. Then I choose you, Naomi said. Today and tomorrow and every day after. I choose you too, Mrs. Kang. Say it in Korean. Sarangi Naomi. Ne sarang. My love. Outside their windows, Manhattan glittered in the late afternoon sun. Somewhere in the city, Maya was probably burning jerk chicken while trying to pronounce Korean words. Soonja was planning their summer visit to Seoul with military precision. Jae-sung was learning to accept that his son had chosen love over strategy. And Yoon-hee was probably already planning the royal wedding ceremony she demanded they have next year. But here in their home, in their truth, Naomi and Min Jae were building something that belonged only to them. A marriage that had started as pretense but became real through honesty, vulnerability, and the terrifying courage it took to choose love even when every logical reason said not to. What are you thinking? Min Jae asked, watching her face. That I'm glad you asked me to pretend to be your wife for one night. Even though it was manipulative and wrong and... Even though, Naomi interrupted. Because sometimes the best love stories start with the worst decisions. And somehow miraculously become real. He kissed her forehead, gentle and reverent. Then here's to bad decisions and impossible love stories. And to marriages built on truth instead of strategy. To us, Min Jae added. However we started, wherever we're going, to us. To us, Naomi agreed. And as they moved through their evening, cooking dinner together, arguing playfully about whose turn it was to choose the music, falling into the comfortable rhythms of shared life, Naomi realized that this was what happiness looked like. Not perfect, not without complications, but real and chosen and worth every risk she'd taken. The maid and the CEO. The desperate arrangement that became genuine love. The pretend marriage that somehow, miraculously, became the realest thing either of them had ever experienced. And it all started with 4 impossible words. I need a wife for tonight. 1 year later. The restaurant was packed for its grand opening. Confluence. The sign read in elegant letters and beneath it in smaller script. Where cultures meet, where flavors unite. Naomi moved through the dining room in a beautiful dress that managed to be both elegant and practical. Soonja's gift, chosen specifically for this night. She greeted guests, supervised staff and made mental notes about what was working and what needed adjustment. From his table near the windows, Min Jae watched his wife with undisguised pride. His family surrounded him. Parents, grandmother, sister who'd flown in from Seoul specifically for this night. Maya sat beside him, now graduated and working at Mount Sinai Hospital's Korean Patient Services program. She's remarkable, Yoon-hee said, watching Naomi handle a kitchen crisis with calm efficiency. You chose well, my son. She chose me back, Min Jae corrected. That's the important part. Have you told her yet? Soonja asked, her knowing eyes sharp as ever. Told her what? Jae-sung looked between them. Min Jae pulled a small box from his pocket. Different from the one he'd used at the garden, different from his grandmother's rings. This box held something new entirely. I'm going to ask her to renew our vows, he said quietly. Properly this time. With both families, with friends, with everyone who matters. A real wedding ceremony, not a city hall signature and a desperate arrangement. And you think she'll say yes? Min Seo teased. You're a terrible husband. You work too much, you can't cook without burning things, and you still don't really understand the subway. She'll say yes, Maya interrupted. Because my sister loves him. Like actually loves him. It's disgusting how cute they are together. Language, Yoon-hee chided, but she was smiling. Across the restaurant, Naomi finished handling the crisis and looked up to find Min Jae watching her. Even across the crowded space, even with 100 conversations happening around them, she felt that connection. The gravity that pulled them together against all logic and reason. He stood and moved through the crowd toward her. You're supposed to be sitting with your family, she said when he reached her. You're my family, he corrected. Everything else is just additional relatives. Naomi laughed, the sound free and genuine. Smooth talker. Did you need something? Actually, yes. He took her hand, the one that still wore 3 rings, his grandmother's engagement ring and wedding band, and the new beginning band he'd given her in the garden. I need a wife. Her smile turned knowing. Is that so? Not for one night this time. For forever. He pulled out the box and opened it. Inside was a ring that made Naomi's breath catch. A beautiful blend of Korean and Western design, diamonds and emeralds set in flowing patterns that somehow captured both their histories. Naomi Carter Kang, Min Jae said softly, would you marry me again? Properly, publicly, with vows we write ourselves and a ceremony that celebrates everything we've built. You know we're already married, right? But she was crying, hand covering her mouth. We're legally married. I want us to be ceremonially, traditionally, completely married. I want to stand in front of everyone we love and choose you all over again. You're impossible, Naomi whispered. Is that a yes? That's a yes, you impossible wonderful man. Yes, I'll marry you again. He slipped the new ring onto her finger. 4 rings now, each one marking a different chapter of their story. Then he kissed her in the middle of her crowded restaurant, and their families applauded, and strangers who didn't know their story smiled at the obvious love between them. When they finally pulled apart, Naomi was laughing through tears. Your timing is terrible. I have a restaurant full of guests who are all watching the owner kiss her husband and not caring about anything else, Min Jae pointed out. Besides, I cleared it with your manager. You have 5 minutes. You planned this. I'm very good at planning when it matters. He tucked a curl behind her ear, the gesture so familiar now, so automatic. Sarangi Naomi. Nay sarang. Nay inseng. My love. My life. Sarangi Min Jae, she replied, her Korean pronunciation much better after a year of lessons with Soonja. Forever this time. No more pretending. No more pretending, he agreed. Just real messy, complicated love. The best kind, Naomi said. And as she returned to her restaurant, to the dream Min Jae had helped her build. Wearing 4 rings that told the story of their impossible love, Naomi knew with absolute certainty that sometimes the worst decisions lead to the best destinations. All because one desperate man had looked at his cleaning lady and said the words that changed everything. "I need a wife for tonight." And she'd been brave enough, or crazy enough, to say yes. A marriage born from desperation became a love built on truth. Because the best love stories aren't the ones that start perfectly, they're the ones where 2 people choose each other again and again, until pretending becomes reality and reality becomes everything.